Okay, our recording is for this meeting is now in progress, and so I'll repeat again that Dave Cluck is going to be doing a slideshow presentation on a couple of lakes that he's toured for quite lengthy amounts of time. He'll do one of the lakes and then stop and ask for questions so that he can get through his slides. Let him do that, and then we'll ask for other suggestions for things to see around these lakes and any questions that you have for him, and then we'll move on to the second lake. So.
Thanks, Al. So my wife and I both retired in 2012 from the university after 40 years each. One of the things on our to-do list was to circle tour all the Great Lakes by car. 2012 or 14, we did Lake Michigan. That was 25 days. In 16, we did Lake Huron, which is going to be this first presentation. That was 27 days. Then we did Superior in 18. That was 28 days. Lake Erie was supposed to be 20, but COVID took care of that, and Canada didn't reopen its border until 22. So we did Lake Erie in August of 22, and we just finished Lake Ontario this past August. So here goes Lake Huron. We started over in Algonac. We just toured the state park. This is their Veterans Memorial. You can see in the upper left corner of the screen of the slides what it is you're looking at.
Dave, maybe give people an idea of where Algonac is if they don't quite know where that is.
So if you're familiar with the mitten over at the just north of Lake St. Clair, where the St. Clair River comes out from Lake Huron, that's where Algonac is, right there at the bottom of the river. So we went up the Huron or the St. Clair Riverside, all the way up through the Thumb, along Lake Huron, through Alpena, Sheboygan, up to Mackinac City, over the bridge, and then up to the Sioux, crossed over, went across the top of Lake Huron through Ontario, and then came down the east side of it, Georgian Bay, and then back up to Bruce Peninsula and west of Georgian Bay, then back down Lake Huron to Windsor and back to Ann Arbor. So Algonac is right there at the mouth of the St. Mary's River. There's an historic house there, built in 1855. Holy Cross Church is 1903. We stop at all the churches, the historic churches in each town, and if they're open, we'll go in and we'll view that as well. This is the interior of this church. This is a Catholic church. We're in Marine City now. This is their city hall, built in 1884. Peach Island Light. You'll see a lot of lighthouses on both these tours. We've been to every lighthouse in the state of Michigan except for 8. Now that's because you need a boat to get to those. So we had lunch at Murphy's Inn in St. Clair. It was formerly a farmer's home and built in 1836. Really nice place if you're ever over that way. This was my salad and my wife's Murphy burger. This is in Port Huron now. It's the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, retired Bramble. That was a tour. The Port Huron Public Library, it's now the Historical Museum there. It was built in 1902. Another Coast Guard cutter. This is the active one, the Hollyhock. This is the Huron Lightship. It used to be out in Lake Huron, anchored there before they got the lighthouses up. It was 1921. This is the Thomas Edison Depot Museum. Some of you may know Thomas Edison was a youngster living in Michigan. He lived in Port Huron, and he was selling newspapers on the train every day between Port Huron and Detroit in order to earn money. This was built in 1859. The Fort Gratiot Lighthouse, built in 1829. Lakeport State Park. We were overnight here. So this is the Cedar Mini Cabin. All through both tours, you'll see in the state of Michigan side of the lakes, we stayed at the Michigan State Parks. We stayed in the mini cabins or the camper cabins or the rustic cabins. They all have heat. They have a ceiling fan. They have a microwave, a mini refrigerator. They have the barbecue there. They also have a fire pit and a picnic table. All we took with us were 2 sleeping bags, 2 army wool blankets, and 2 pillows. And the cabins you can book 1 year in advance. Everything else you can only book 6 months in advance. So this made it really, really nice and easy to plan everything. There was dinner at the Big George's Coney Island restaurant there. That was my Coney dog. There's your Blue Water Bridge, Blue Water International Bridge over to Sarnia, Canada. This is the Point All Bark Lighthouse. It's built in 1848. It's next stop north of Port Huron. And you'll see these signs all the way around on the Michigan side. The Lake Huron Circle Tour, Lake Michigan has the same signs. So does Lake Superior and Lake Erie. Lake Ontario does not have the Circle Tour signs for some reason. So we're headed to Port Sanilac now. That's the Port Sanilac Lighthouse. That is a private residence now, built in 1886. The County Historical Village and Museum, the Loop Harrison Mansion. The Harbor Beach Lighthouse, built 1885. This is Justice Frank Murphy's house and museum. Frank Murphy was a governor of the state and elected to the federal court. His law office is there in town in Marine City as well. We're up at the historic village in Huron City, almost getting to the top of the thumb. In 1861, this village was there. There's nothing but historic buildings there. There's no longer any Huron City. The Sanilac Petroglyph State Historic Site, you may have heard of that. These are ancient ruins of the Native Americans. This is all fenced in. They had to do the fencing because of vandalism at the petroglyphs. This symbol is the bowman, the great eagle. This is all etched in the stone. There's the interpreter that we were there for an hour and a half with the interpreter explaining all of this, the history of the petroglyphs and what all the symbols mean. That is the giant petroglyph. This is up near Port Sanilac. The Port Crescent State Park, again overnight in the mini cabin. Had dinner at the Garfield Inn, a historic home and estate built in 1857. It was my T-bone steak with the blue cheese mushrooms and the new potatoes. And in Port Austin now at the History Center. The Port Crescent State Park is up there at Port Huron. Over to Caseville, we're now headed down the thumb along Saginaw Bay. This is the Caseville Historical Society is in the old Maccabees building, which was built in 1895. They have an annual cheeseburger festival there, which is really a riot to attend to.
Did you get to the cheese festival?
No, it was happening 2 weeks after we were there. It's in August, or a week after we were there. Sleeper State Park, again, in the mini cabin. You can see how how nice they are. Really, really comfortable. They're all the cabins sleep anywhere from 4 to 8. And the cost was $65 to $75. And we were only there for one night for all of them. The Thumb Octagonal Agricultural Barn Museum in Gagetown, which is up near Caseville. It's built in 1923. Fascinating place. We spent an hour and a half touring this. There's 3 levels of the barn with exhibits on it, all about Michigan agriculture. Whoops. Over to Sebring now, after Caseville, a township hall built 1877. It's their Historical Society building now. The Bay County Historical Museum is in the old National Guard Armory, which was built in 1911. The Bay City Historic City Hall, built in 1895. This is an unbelievable building. If you could spend, there's a lot to do in Bay City. You could spend a whole weekend there, and this is really a place to go see. It is just gorgeous inside. The city, the residents wanted to tear it down, put some big, ugly-looking glass steel commercial building there, but or the city council did, but the residents said absolutely not. So they raised funds to restore it, and it reopened about 16 years ago. This is the view from the top of that tower. That's looking north on Washington Avenue. St. Stanislaus Kostka Roman Catholic Church there. It was built in 1890. And one side of the state historical marker is in English, and the other side is in Polish. The USS Edson is there now. Again, a tour, retired Navy ship from the 50s and 60s. It served during the Vietnam War as well. Very nice tour. They volunteers did a real nice job on this. The Bay City State Recreation Area is our next overnight. They're in the mini cabin. And there's the refrigerator, the microwave, the coffee maker. Saginaw Bay Visitor Center. This is in the Bay City State Recreation Area. Headed north on M13, still on the circle tour. This is going up through Pinconning now. There's the Williams Cheese Shop in Linwood. Picked up a lot of cheese curds for our trip. Historic Depot and Visitor Center in Standish. We're now getting over on the north side of Saginaw Bay, headed up towards Tawa City and Alpena. The UMRA Masonic Hall, built in 1890. Aranac County Historical Museum is in the old church in Au Gres, the next city on the lake. Tawas Point State Park. Which has the lighthouse. The Osco County Historical Museum is there in Tawas as well. And outside on the lawn is an 1890s horse-drawn road grader. Welcome to the River Road National Scenic Byway. This is the Osable River. This is a really fascinating thing. You could spend a weekend doing this as well. It's extended. It ends. The east end is in Tawa City, and it starts way over at Grayling. So we went out to Grayling and then came back in along the River Road. The Westgate Scenic Overlook. The Welcome Center is at this place here, at this stop. That is the overlook. So there are 5 dams on the Osable River. That's why the river, their lakes every so often. Largo Springs Interpretive Site. Again, you can see the amount of water there. The river has been because of the dam. Canoeist Memorial. You may be aware, it's it there. You may be aware every year for decades there's been an annual Au Canoe race. It starts in the late afternoon in Grayling, and they paddle the entire Au River out to Tawa City, paddling all the way through the night, portaging 5 dams. The Lumberman's Monument and Visitor Center. Another 2 or 3 hour stop if you wanted to do everything. Ends up there in Oscoda. I'm sorry, not Tawas, Oscoda, the Paddletown, USA. Next stop was the Harrisville Train Depot, built 1886. Sturgeon Point Lighthouse is there in Sturgeonville. That was built in 1869. The Old Bailey Schoolhouse was in use from 1907 to 1941. It's there at the lighthouse. One-room schoolhouse. Starlight, Starbright, where the heck is Mr. Wright? I wish the dog had a snooze button. Harrisville State Park, our next overnight. This was the Sunrise Mini Cabin. Okay, the inside of the cabin you can see there, it's quite large. See the green flag there? There's green, yellow, and red flags on the beaches of the lakes. Green means it's okay to go swimming. Red means it's closed. Yellow means it's not, there's no lifeguards in any of them, so use caution when you're out in the water. There's Paul Bunyan at Blue Ox Babe on US 23 in Seneca, north of Harrisville. The Great Lakes Maritime Museum Center in Alpena. You could spend an entire weekend in Alpena as well. This is really nice, run by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have a walking heritage trail outside along the river. A lot of interesting facts there. The Alpena City Hall, built in 1904. Here's our headed out. We're headed north on 23 and the Lake Huron Circle Tour. M32 West take you back over to I-75. The Alpena County Courthouse. We stop at every courthouse. They all have historical markers, every one in the state, every county. And if they're open, we'll go in, and they are just like the church. They're just gorgeous, gorgeously maintained. This was built in 1935. The original Presque Isle Front Range Light and the Rear Range Lighthouse, built in 1840. It's now a private residence. This is north of Alpena, Presque Isle. That's the current Front Range Light right out at the water. And the current Rear Range lights, the ships line those lights up, and that'll guide them into the port. That's why they're called range lights. There's the old Presque Isle Lighthouse. You can drive to that, built in 1840. And there's the new one, built in 1870, much taller. Thompson's Harbor State Park in Presque Isle. That was our next overnight, and there's the Stone Path Rusty Cabin. You can see there's the shed. If you're wet in the winter, you have firewood there in the shed. There's the picnic table. There's the well water pump for you, the fire pit. That's the inside of that cabin. The 40 Mile Point Lighthouse is in Rogers City, built in 1896. That was our next stop north. up there where the big stone quarry is, limestone quarry is. Great Lakes Maritime Museum in Rogers City. Harbor View, open to the public during daylight hours only. This is the H. Lee White in port, loading up on the limestone to come down the lake, Detroit, Cleveland, maybe to Erie, Pennsylvania. That's the Lakes Contender, a self-unloading freighter. It's heading into port there in Rogers City at the big stone quarry. The Bradley House Presque County Museum, Historical Museum, is there as well. Carl D. Bradley was the founder of the Bradley Transportation Company, and they owned the stone quarry there in Rogers City. Went to Carson's Restaurant for lunch. There's the stone quarry, the largest in the world. Lakes Contender, you can see the ship we just saw earlier pulling into port. B.H. Heft State Park was our next overnight in Rogers City. The mini cabin again. Very comfortable. Here you can see the yellow flag. You can see the sign there on the post, the green, yellow, red. The U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Geological Station at Hammond Bay, the Biological Station on Huron Beach, which is just north of Rogers City. It's open to the public, but not the day we were there. It's open 3 days a week, but not. We got there on the wrong day, so we weren't able to go in and learn more about the biological station there. That's the 14-foot shoal lighthouse from land. That's there at Rogers City as well. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Mackinac in Sheboygan. This is the retired, or this is the current one, rather. I'm sorry. The retired one is up in Mackinac City. This is the current one. The Sheboygan River Front Range Light, built in 1880. And just opened 2 years ago, fully restored. The old Sheboygan County Courthouse in 1869. The Opera House, built in 1871. We took a tour of that. Fully restored from 1871. Historical Museum of Sheboygan County, 1880. This was the museum was originally the sheriff's house and jail. And this Native American cabin in the 1890s was over at Burt Lake, just on the east side of I-75 from Sheboygan. Sheboygan County History Center. It's next to the old jail we just saw. And we were overnight at Sheboygan State Park. We didn't go more than 60 or 75 miles a day, many times less. We were in the 14-foot shoals cabin. That's it there, right on the lake. There's your interior. This one slept 8. That's the cabin beach. That's the 14-foot shoal lighthouse way out there in the background center. You'll see that better when we get up to Mackinac City and take the Shepherd's lighthouse cruise. That's the Pole Reef lighthouse, also taken from the cabin. The Boy Blank Island is behind the freighter. And you'll see the lighthouse there as well. Here's sunset from the cabin that evening. That's the 14-foot shoal lighthouse there in the background. This was the following morning. We got up to leave at 6:30. Lake was completely fogged in. There's the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Mackinac that's retired. And we toured that. The Mighty Mac, headed to the UP now. Took the boat over to Mackinac Island for a bit. There's the Round Island Lighthouse, built in 1895. This is taken from Fort Holmes, up on the top of Mackinac Island, and Fort Holmes was where the British came over from Fort St. Joseph in Ontario and surprised the Americans during the War of 1812. Michigan Governor's Summer Residence, built in 1902, there on the island. That's the Pearl down there in the middle. That's the Pearl Mist, Great Lakes tour ship in the Mackinac Island Harbor. That ship started sailing the Great Lakes 6 years. Let's see. This is Lake Huron, 8 years ago. During the winter months, it goes down to the Caribbean and sails around. Comes back up every year for the Great Lakes tours. You'll see it again when we get over to Manitoulin Island in Ontario. The old Mackinac Point Lighthouse, built 1892. You had lunch at Wienerlicious, right there off I-75. And you come into town. Great. Hot dog is my #1 food. Then the prime rib, and then pizza. Shepler's Dock for the Northern Lake Huron Lighthouse Tour. There's the Bois Blanc Island Lighthouse in Foghorn. The lighthouse there on the left, and the Foghorn down there, the White Tower on the right. There's the closer look at the Poe Reef Light, built in 1929. And the 14-foot shoal light, also built in 1929. The old Sheboygan River crib light right out on the lake at the entrance to the Sheboygan River. The Wawadam Pier light and the old ferries dock in St. Ignace now. In 1923 to 57, the ferries were working back and forth between the upper and lower peninsulas before the Mighty Mac was built. And the car ferry Wawadam was docked here in St. Ignace. Site of Fort de Baude, 1671. Fascinating area here. The Native American culture here is just, you could spend a whole weekend right here in St. Ignace as well, and use every bit of your free time. The Chippewa County Historical and Native American Museum. No pictures were allowed inside the museum. Fascinating history, though, of the Chippewa. Museum of the Ojibwe Culture in Father Marquette Park. And this is the grave of Father Marquette. Strait State Park was our next overnight. Another mini cabin. There's the bridge from our side, from the Upper Peninsula side, as we're heading over now towards Drummond Island through the Les Chenaux Islands. Lunch at the Galley there in town in St. Ignace. Really nice. I had a tuna noodle casserole and stewed tomatoes. Heading west to Hessel, Cedarville Detour, and Drummond Island, again on the Lake Huron Circle Tour on M134. Historic Schoolhouse in Hessel, now the Community Center. The Les Chenaux Islands in Cedarville. The Detour Reef Lighthouse, built in 1931, right there at the mouth of the St. Mary's River. The Detour Historical Museum, we did that while waiting for the ferry to come over to get us. And then that's the Federal Orion self-unloading freighter headed south while we were waiting for the ferry over to Drummond Island. There's the ferry, the car ferry coming back from the island. There's the better view of the Detour Reef Lighthouse from the ferry. That's the Frying Pan Island Light in the St. Mary's River on Drummond Island. Historical Museum. Come back over, got back on the lake, the circle tour, now on M48, headed up towards the Sioux. Welcome to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Crossing the St. Mary's River on the Edison Canal. Historic Water Street District, site of the 1820 Fort Brady. That's the Frying Pan Island Light. It's now there. Chippewa County Courthouse, built in 1877. The Crane of the Sioux. These are two iconic statues in the Wolf of Rome. The Army Corps of Engineers, the Sioux Locks Visitor Center, and many of you have probably been there. You could spend again an entire weekend at the Sioux as well. 2,342 miles to the sea from Duluth, Minnesota, out to the Atlantic Ocean through the Great Lakes. The Shipwreck Society building, built in 1899, formerly the Superintendent's House. This is Crawford Hall at Lake Superior State University on the site of the former Fort Brady. Edson Hydroelectric Facility on the St. Mary's River Canal. Now we've crossed the St. Well, there's a picture of it. We're going to be going there. The St. Mary's River is at the Sioux, Ontario. Historic Water Street homes. A lot of the early folks. There's the Kemp Coal Dock office, the Bishop Beriga House from 1864, Henry Roll Schoolcraft Indian Agent's office from 1827, the John Johnson House of 1822. All in this historic homes district. Oh, that's the Mesabi Miner heading into the Sioux Locks and out into Lake Superior. Now we're crossing International Bridge over the St. Mary's River to Ontario, Canada. Algoma Steel at Sault Ste. Marie, biggest employer there in the Sioux. Enjoy your visit. Bienvenue. So this is the Canadian Sault Ste. Marie Canal National Historic Site. The Ship Canal talks all about that. A nice museum there as well. That's the original Canadian Canal. Tour boats can use that. Looking west towards the International Bridge. And then across the St. Mary's River again at that Edison Canal on the American side. Powerhouse is the visitor center, the old powerhouse. First Nation, it's all First Nation land there. Canadian Bush Plane Museum, the Heritage Museum is there as well. This is the Canadian de Havilland Beaver, built in 1952. And the Fokker Trimotor Friendship, built in 2009 for the Amelia Earhart movie. Ermentinger Clerg National Historic Site of 1808, very historic. With their Discovery Center as well. This was the Sault Ste. Marie Historical Museum is in the old 1902 post office. The Algonquin Hotel, 1888. We stayed here overnight, built in 1888. Had lunch here at Muyo's restaurant. Tessie had the roasted Lake Superior trout with the peas and carrots. The Bellevue Park there in the Sioux. The art gallery is there. The U.S. Ferry that goes from the Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan to Sugar Island in the St. Mary's River. The Arthur M. Anderson, the largest ship on the Great Lakes now, is a self-unloading freighter. It's downbound from the locks. The Warner and the Anderson are passing by each other there. This is all viewed from the park. Now we're following the Queens Highway 17 over to Sudbury before we turn south and come down the east side of Georgian Bay. This is the bridge to St. Joseph Island. The Island Museum Village. Historic St. Joseph, built by the British in 1796. The Visitor Center. The original site of the fort. The layout of the fort. Cemetery there, the Tenby Bay Cemetery on the island, 1896. Mountain United Church of Canada, built in 1881. Still in use. There's the front range and rear range lights there on the mainland. We had lunch at the Bavarian Inn in Bruce Mines. My New York strip steak lunch. Then our next stop was the Carolyn Beach Motel in Thessalon, Ontario. Sunset. The Thessalon Lighthouse in 1920, built in 1920. It's now a private residence. The Township Heritage Park Museum, again, fascinating. All the way across North Bay, which it's called North Bay at the top of Lake Huron there, from the Sioux over to Sudbury. A lot to see and do in a lot of these small towns. Continuing east on the Queens Highway, Trans-Canada. The Iron Bridge Historical Museum was our next stop. The Blind River Timber Village Museum was after that. Massey Historic Museum was another stop. This is the Domtar Paper Mill on the Spanish River in Espanola on the Queens Highway. We went down through Espanola over the one-lane bridge over the North Channel going into Little Current. It's a swing bridge. Headed to the Manitoulin Island. We overnight stayed at the Hawberry Motel there in Little Current on the island. The Old Mill Heritage Center, town called Kagawong on the island, built in 1925, all run by the First Nation people of Canada. That's the Post Office Museum there. Mississauga Straits Lighthouse at Meldrum Bay, built in 1866, under renovation. Bridal Veil Falls. We had dinner at Maggie's Cafe. Nice little diner on the route. There's that Pearl Mist again, entering Little Current. The swing bridge is open. You can see the background for it to get through. There's a bear-proof trash container. They're all over the place. Every house has one of those. Welcome to Shagwanda, a place to discover. It's the Centennial Museum, again, of the First Nation peoples. Headed south now, turning off the Queens Highway onto 69, down to Killarney. It's a national park. Stayed there at the Killarney Bay Inn. That's Tessie's dinner. More fish. The Killarney Bay Lighthouse. Black Bear. Next day we were out, and Black Bear was roaming the town on its own, eating the apples. You can see them. The tree is full of them. They don't bother anybody, and the people just leave them alone. The Killarney Centennial Museum. We're headed down the east coast of from Killarney to Perry Sound. Perry Sound is the home of Bobby Orr, the great Boston Bruin. Stopped at the Historic Museum there. Very interesting, informative. Climbed the fire tower. Get a good view of the Georgian Bay. That's looking east over Perry Sound into Georgian Bay. Leaving the Queens Highway 69 on to Queens Highway 12 west to Midland. That's the Victoria Harbor rear range light there. Passenger steamship Kuwaitan in Port McNichol. We toured that. This was a fascinating place. This was the home of the Huron, native Hurons, St. Marie among the Hurons National Historic Park in Midland. We spent 2.5 hours there. It's unbelievable history. Midland, Ontario Visitor Center. Midland is the mural capital of Ontario, and you'll see why. The Victorian Inn Bed and Breakfast was where we stayed for 2 nights. Breakfast. This is the Martyrs Shrine there in Midland as well. Another fascinating 2-hour stop. Statue St. Isaac Jogues, who was martyred there. St. Noel Chabanel, again, another martyr. This is the chapel of the church, interior of the church. Our Lady of the Huron Shrine. This Joseph Chiwatenwa. And you've heard of Kateri Takakwitha. This is the murals. This is on the silos, the grain silo in the harbor there. There are murals on almost every building in Midland. The library restaurant, we had the dinner there, formerly the Carnegie City Library. A little blurred on that. My filet mignon dinner. Tessie had barbecue ribs. The Indian Maiden Ferry to Christian Island, home of the First Nation of Ontario. The Christian Island Lighthouse, built in 1857, right there on the southern and the south end of Georgian Bay. The United Church of Canada, built in 1925 on the island. The Collingwood Train Depot, 1853, and now the city's historical museum. World War I Veterans Memorial. We go to veterans parks at every town we stop in. The Owen Sound now, the train depot, it's now the Marine and Rail Museum. Billy Bishop, Home and Heritage Museum, 1884. Billy Bishop was the Red Baron of the Canadian Air Force during World War I. The Eddie Rickenbacker of the United States, Eddie Rickenbacker, Billy Bishop. Aviation Ace. There's the Great Lakes Elevator Company there. The Cape Croker United Church of Canada, 1892. This is again on First Nation property, going up the Bruce Peninsula now towards Tobermory. The World War I Veterans Memorial there. The native First Nation served as well in the Canadian Army. Cape Croker Lighthouse, built in 1902. The Catholic Church there, built in 1908. Home of the First Nation of Canada on the Bruce Peninsula. Looking north on the Georgian Bay. And the town of Lion's Head, that's the port light. Welcome to historic Cabot Head Light Station, also on the west side of Georgian Bay. There's the view looking at the north Niagara Escarpment. The Big Tub Harbor Lighthouse in Tobermory at the tip of the Bruce Peninsula. Parks Canada National Park Visitor Center. Again, you could spend an entire weekend here in Tobermory as well as in Midland, as well as in Collingwood. The Princess Hotel is where we are overnight there, 2 nights. We boarded, there's the Chichimon ferry coming in from Manitoulin Island into Tobermory. It goes back and forth 6 times a day. And the bow comes up and everybody, the ramp comes down and you offload. We had dinner at the Crow's Nest restaurant there in town. That was my dinner, a burger and soup. The Bruce Anchor cruise to Flower Pot Island. That is the Flower Pot Island Lighthouse. It's now the museum, 1897. That's the Foghorn. Now we're boarding the Chi Chi Man, headed back to Manitoulin Island, where we were a week earlier. There's the Cove Island Lighthouse, built in 1855 on the way out. Pulling into South Weymouth Harbor, which is the port on south side of Manitoulin Island for the ferry. Went to the museum there. St. Paul's Anglican Church, built in 1845, still in use. Manitowoc Bay Light, built in 1885. The Amish are very prominent on the island. Historical Museum at South Weymouth, back at the port. There's the Front Range light heading back out now. We had dinner on the Chi-Chi-Man on the way back. That's the dining room. I had the super hot roast beef sandwich. Well, we're on Route 13 now along the western shore of the Bruce Peninsula, which is the eastern side of Lake Huron. Stokes Bay Lighthouse of 1855 was our first stop. Now we're in Southampton, and this is the waterfront there. The Chantry Island Lighthouse, built 1859, is there. We took the boat out to it and toured it. I had a Maurice salad at the Lighthouse Restaurant. This is looking into Southampton from the Chantry Island Light. The Bruce County Historical Museum. Kincardine Lighthouse and Museum, built in 1881. View from the light. Point Clark Lighthouse, 1859. Down Queens Highway to Goderich. This is the original Goderich Jail, built in 1842. That was the governor's house. It was attached to the jail. Huron County Historical Museum. The train depot, it's now a restaurant. There's the lighthouse, built 1846. Route 33 down the St. Clair River from Sarnia on our way to Chatham, almost at the end of our trip. The Dawn Settlement. The Reverend Josiah Henson, as you can see there, abolitionist. This was the endpoint for all of the Underground Railroad folks that came out of, got crossed at Detroit into Canada. Also, the site, Uncle Tom's Cabins National Historic Site, is there as well. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote that book just before the Civil War. Fascinating museum, all about the Underground Railroad and slavery. Josiah Henson and his wife. That's his tombstone. British American Cemetery is there as well, from the War of 1812. Crossing the Detroit River on Ambassador Bridge at Windsor, Canada. And we are home. All right, so that took a while, boy. With I'm gonna go. Any questions before we head into Superior?
Just a few comments, Dave, as you were going around the lake. I've got a few questions, and others, remember that you're muted if you have other things that you might want to point out that you've seen going around Lake Huron. Actually having we actually have a house in Bay City, so I have to throw in a few Bay City comments that you did comment on some of the things in town. I will say again, as you did, that the Bay City State Park has some great hiking trails there. A couple of towers to overlook the lake and stuff like that. So Bay City's got that. Also, a couple restaurants in Bay City. If you like the real seafood restaurant in Ann Arbor, Bay City has a branch of the real seafood restaurant that's right on the river. So the food is as good, and the view is probably a little bit better. You get great sunsets from there. And the Old City Hall is another one. I just had somebody that did their vacation, kind of a 5-day vacation to Bay City, and they really liked Old City Hall, which is one that we would recommend also. I would also say that the state parks and the Thumb area just have some absolutely gorgeous beaches. Port Crescent is one of our favorites. And if you want a restaurant recommendation up there, the farmhouse restaurant in Port Austin is out in the country, and it's really good food. It's often crowded because it's well known, but a really nice restaurant there. And Bay City also has a couple of boat tours, a 2-hour boat trip up and down the Saginaw River on the out into Lake Huron is the Winona. So if you like boat rides, that's one thing. And they actually have a sailboat also. So and I will say, Dave, I don't know if you've been to there is a Bay City lighthouse, a rearranged lighthouse in Bay City that's currently closed and is
Yes.
being remodeled. And
Yeah, we were there. We had access to that when we were up in Bay City for the Tall Ships Festival 8 years ago. And it's on Detroit Edison property. So this historical society had to get the Lighthouse Preservation Society had to get permission to get the gate unlocked in order to go to it. Yeah.
And that is being remodeled, and I'm hoping that it will be open sometime within the next year. They got slowed up by COVID a little bit, but
Yeah.
I see some other people with comments. Susan,
Yeah.
Pat.
We both have a comment. You go, Pat. First, Pat.
How do you remember all of these places? Do you take notes? Do you review them before?
Yeah.
I'm
So
astonished.
I can can you see the screen right there with all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
photos on it? Okay, up the first one there, the Circle Tour of Lake Huron, August 9th to September 1. So I planned that itinerary out 2 years in advance for every lake.
Okay.
We booked the state park sites a year in advance like we can. So we had no problem there. And then we stay in historic hotels or beds and breakfasts on the other sides of the lakes. So a lot of this information I've gotten just pick up every flyer in the Michigan state, the state welcome centers as we're coming in and out of the state, and or just going somewhere. We stop every one of them and get all that information. And I'll also go online. I'll request brochures to be sent from the county visitor and convention bureaus or cities itself, and just go through all this stuff 2 years in advance and lay it all out.
Impressive. And how do you remember all the meals?
Well, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes the whole trip.
All right.
But
Susan
can
has a
I,
more serious question.
I wondered how many times you spent more than one night at a stop. It seemed like you moved along and you
Yes.
didn't move really far, so you could go into depth in those areas. But you
Right.
said one time you stayed 2 nights.
Yeah, on this trip, we were probably in overnight for 2 nights in 6 places.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then my other question was, how much do you happen across and just do because, hey, you saw, here's another little county museum or a, neighbor city museum you didn't know about. And it sounds like you did a lot of pre-planning though.
Yes, yeah. For this trip, well, just to let you know, I had 452 slides here. The actual whole tour has 4,700 slides.
Oh, my Lord.
Thanks. I see somebody else has a question.
Kayla, you have a question?
yes, I do. Thank you. That was an amazing presentation. And this is my first time attending the sessions, and it was really, really great. I grew up on the western side of the state, so I grew up in Battle Creek, so I've been very partial to Lake
Mhm.
Michigan, but you
Mhm.
definitely have piqued my interest in Lake Huron. And matter of fact, my husband and I, we tend not to do summer vacations elsewhere just because we love Michigan so much and love Michigan summers. And hey, how about that weather yesterday? We were trying to hit north yesterday, but
Yeah.
we only got to Kalamazoo and then came home. But we have some pretty fantastic colors right here in
Mhm.
southeastern Michigan right now. But great presentation. And I wanted to know about your photos. Do you have a camera? Are you using your phone or okay.
It's a Canon, it's a Canon G7X. It's digital. The SIM cards will hold up to 3,000 photos.
All right. So I have been really partial to the iPhone and taking pictures, and I do a lot of social media. So pretty much my life is on Facebook.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking now about actually getting a camera now that I'm retired from University of Michigan and soon to be retired from Washington Community College in a year. And so
Congrats.
yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to do some travel. And, my husband said it probably will be a year or two before we even get out of the state of Michigan and go to other places because there is so many things to see right here. And
Absolutely.
we have a beautiful, amazing state. So
Yes.
thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
That actually reminds me, that could be another travel discussion group topic of what cameras do you use to take your pictures on the trip? A lot of cell phones nowadays take really good pictures, but
Yeah.
there's other options. We could even do probably a short
Yeah.
discussion on that, on what cameras work really well.
So
Dave?
That would be great. I've been a big iPhone user ever since the BlackBerry went poof. And but the Android cameras now are really, really good. So for the first time in many years, I'm thinking about switching to an Android. But I thought, maybe I'll stick with the iPhone and then get a camera. So
yeah.
I think that would be a great discussion.
My wife uses her iPhone, the camera and the picture she sends, she can send them. This is my technology here, a flip phone. She can send them to the granddaughters, our son and daughter and her friends and all photos as we're going around the lake. And
And just before we get to Julie, I will also say that my wife and I do the same thing. I use the digital camera, but it's not easy to send those pictures to people. You can, but it's a lot easier on the cell phone. So she does she does a cell phone picture so she can send them back to family while we're traveling, and then I do the digital ones that I put together later. So Julia.
Yeah, so I love all the planning that went into this. And it seems like, especially with the smaller museums, pretty often they're closed on like Sunday or Monday. So how do you work this where you're coming up a coast and you're getting into these little town, or even ahead of time you're planning, and you realize that when you get to a town, the good museums are closed?
Sure, yeah. So when I get all the information, I gather all my information, I'll write down the days and the hours they're open, and I'll look at lay it all out for the dates we're going, and just see if there are things. And then if there's something that we really need to see that's going to be closed the day we're going through the town, I'll adjust our start date in order to accommodate that, in order to be sure to get there. And then so all that's 2 years in advance, and then 6 months out, I'll go back and just make up to their website and to see if any of that has changed. Their days and hours of operation have changed.
Any other comments, questions, things?
I can't find the hand. Where do I find the hand?
Yeah, down at the bottom of your screen.
I see companions, apps, more, share, react, chat, participants.
I think it might be in the React.
React.
But you can go ahead and you don't have to raise your
I
hand.
see.
You can just ask your question.
Okay, Dave, I wonder how long this trip took.
This one took 27 days.
27 days, okay.
Yeah. Lake
Oh, it takes
Michigan.
a lot of
Lake-
planning.
Yeah, Lake Michigan was 25, Lake Superior was 28, Lake Erie was 21, and Lake Ontario was 22.
And you did all the driving or
Yes, all the driving. Yeah,
it was just the two of you?
yes.
Wow, fascinating. Really, thank
I
you.
got a good quick question, Dave. All these cabins that you stayed at,
Yes,
what kind of restroom facilities do they have?
they're right there. The modern restrooms facilities are right there with the showers and the toilets and the pot and pan cleaning sinks and all that stuff. There were only two of the cabins we were at where they had a pit toilet right there at the cabin because they were so far they were outside of the principal camping ground where all the tent and RV people were.
Okay, thank you.
So
And
how
look-
did you find these circle tours? Is it you got them at the places where you went for the
Yeah,
the
Mitch, you can stop at the Michigan Welcome Centers. You can ask about the circle tours, and they'll give you information on that, brochures on that, and then I get out the Michigan map and just
plan it yourself?
plan it myself. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. There is nothing. There is no circle tour of Lake Huron that's all written out for you to just hand you a book.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But you can get the maps of the circle tours at the welcome centers as you come across from Ohio or as you're
Yes.
coming across the Blue Water Bridge. I know of two of those have really, really good welcome centers that
Yes.
have the maps of the Great Lakes.
Right. Yeah.
Susan or Pat.
Mhm.
Yep, I saw Julia had a question in the chat when we first started about what time of year this was, Dave.
This was 2016 for Lake Huron.
What month?
August.
August.
It's always in August.
I see.
I've
And
got
then
I've got scout camp in July.
don't want to interfere with that. I just wanted to mention to the folks on the call, in case you don't know, was it last spring, May? I think we had a session at one of our monthly meetings where people brainstormed really cool places to go in Michigan or in nearby areas.
Nearby. Yeah.
And I thought of it when you mentioned the cheeseburger festival, because somebody put in and we have on our website somewhere in the UMRA website, there's a digital copy of all of these ideas so that you can look these up by where you want to go, how far from Ann Arbor, etc. So just want to let people know that that resource is out there. And we could follow up with a link as to where that is on the website if people were interested. And Keela, I thought of it for you because you mentioned, lots of interesting things to do in Michigan. And that was the idea of that program. Lots of good ideas. And Dave, the Cheeseburger Festival, and some of the things that Pat and I did this summer, we found in that directory of local ideas. So
Yeah.
just a pitch for UMRA.
Yeah. But you can see
I
up there.
finally went to the
Go ahead.
ED Discovery Center in
Mhm.
Chelsea, in the Waterloo Recreation Park this summer.
Yes.
Drive past it all the time, never stop.
Right.
I
Yep.
stopped. I said, you know what? I'm in Chelsea. Let me go here. And, very small, but very picturesque. And it was
Yes.
nice.
That
Yes.
would be a good one to put in in our database of nearby things to do that are a little bit off the beaten path.
Oh,
That'd be cool.
that's a really good idea. Actually, coincidentally, I just talked to a naturalist from the Waterloo Recreation Center there that you just mentioned, and we do a kayak trip each month in the summer, and he's going to plan a bird watching or duck search in that recreation area for next spring. So if you're just a pitch for the kayaks shared interest group, if you're interested in kayaking or birds, I think we will make that part of our trips next year.
Yeah. So you
Very
see
nice.
up there in the corner, the circle tour, the Word document. I'm going to send that to Joe, the marker, and ask him to get that onto the onto the travel website, so you can access the website and pull that whole itinerary up to see as well how it was all laid out.
That's good. And then I did see a comment from Kyla also again that AAA, if you can find one that's open and has maps, they have fantastic maps for all the states and as well as probably for the Circle Tour. So another place you can go if you have a AAA membership. I've used those in the past and they're really very good to have.
Yeah.
So Dave, with that, I don't want to cut you short on your the other lake tour that you're doing.
Yeah, but
Uh,
this one took 45 minutes, Al, and with our comments and all, and we haven't got 20 minutes left. Lake Superior is going to take another 45 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking we might save that for
Save that for another time.
for
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah.
I really like the discussions afterwards, so I don't want to
Yes.
shut those down. That if people have comments or they've got, these are as much as we with these the slideshow presentation. It's a discussion thing. It isn't just somebody showing slides. We'd like to hear what everybody's experiences are with these areas or questions that you have about going to them. So that's all. I appreciate all the comments that people have had today on and the questions that you've had. So so if we'll hold that maybe to another meeting, so we have plenty of time to talk about the other
Sure.
Great Lakes. And this is our first venture into a travel program, a travel log basically on a US. Oh no, I guess we did Utah also, but so we are blending in the US ones as well as international trips because there are some great things to see. And as Kyla said, the state of Michigan itself is just a fantastic place to travel and and visit. So Susan, did you have another thing that you just popped up?
You're still muted, Susan.
Yeah, I found the link for the Travel Gems database where you can enter and also search for ideas that people have put in. I don't know that people did many entries after our one meeting, and I'm going to double check. I think it's under the Get Connected section. Yeah, there's tabs across the top of our website. One says Get Connected, and about 2/3 of the way down on the list of things in that section, it says Travel Gems, and that's the name of the database where you can enter and also browse ideas that others put in. That's also where you can find the podcasts and the ride share and all that other kind of stuff, and the special interest groups.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just so you know, for the 5 Great Lakes, it's a toss up between Huron and Superior for the top 2 of the 5 for me, for us, and and then it would be Lake Michigan, but Lake Michigan is the most commercialized lake because on the Michigan side of the lake. But the Lake Michigan would have been 3rd, and then Lake Erie, and then Lake Ontario.
And I also make the comment that I'm told that Lake Huron is the cleanest of the Great Lakes. I thought that might be Lake Superior, but supposedly Lake Huron is the cleanest of the Great Lakes. So
Yes.
it's another
Yeah.
reason to visit that lake. A lot of a nice variety between commercial stuff as well as wide open spaces like Dave has showed us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if there's not any other comments, then I'm going to move on to our next meeting is on November 19th. We're moving the meeting up a week from when we usually meet on the 4th Tuesday. We're moving us up a week because so it doesn't interfere with Thanksgiving week. So make sure you put that on your calendar. Our scheduled topic for that meeting was a continuation of a discussion I think we had back in July on how do you individually plan for your trips. And actually, I think Dave just gave you a great example of how he plans for his trips. So we can build off of that. Susan and Pat Shields led that discussion back in July, and they kind of ran out of time. Susan says that you still have a few more slides that you'd like to share. And Susan and I talked a little bit earlier today. We thought that might be a nice a continuation of what are the types of things you do to prepare for trips, whether they're whether you're individually planned, or even how do you prepare for things that you're doing with groups or travel agencies and that type of thing. Doing that research like Dave does ahead of time, finding when things are open, checking out hiking trails and that type of thing really enhances your trips. And we thought we'll recommend that to the travel discussion group. But we are also open to anybody else that would like to do a presentation on a trip that they've done. We like to have a variety of people sharing their experiences. And we've had some repeat people because they're willing to share, but I think it does take some time, as Dave had to do, to put together this slideshow program. But I think it's kind of fun to do. I did one of them, and Susan and Pat have done one too. So if you have a trip that you've done, we let the travel committee know. Let Joe Marker know is probably the best person to tell about that, and we can add you to the program sometime in 2025. We are not meeting in December. We decided early on there's just too many things going on in December, so we will have our meeting in November on the 19th again. At the moment, we're going to continue that discussion on how you prepare for a trip. We haven't decided yet whether to make that a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting. Maybe with all the things going on in November, a Zoom meeting might be better, but I'll leave that to the travel discussion committee to make that decision. Susan, anything else or Pat, that you want to say about continuing your discussion that you had on how to prepare for your trips individually?
No, literally, I think we had 2 or maybe 3 slides, and they were really meant just to be discussion starters. Yes, about the benefits, the joys, the headaches, the best ways of doing individual itineraries, and exactly what you were saying, Al. Dave, you're the expert at it, and have your methods that seem to work for you. Not everybody is that organized, so it'd be interesting to hear how people do it.
We were just saying,
Did you get the interest in this, Dave? How did you get interested in organizing all of these trips?
Just I'm a history buff. All I do is read history, learn about history.
Okay.
We did a lot of with my parents in the 50s and 60s. Did a lot of touring of the state and out of state, and every time we go into the welcome centers here in Michigan, you'd see signs about circle tours and all that. So I decided to put all 5 on the to-do list once we retired.
Thank you very much. That was
You've done
really
a great
good.
job. And Dave, we do want to continue with your other trip. I don't know, we know whether we'll take a break and then do that, schedule it for January or February.
Sure.
But we might want to do that just in November to keep it going up. Like I said, the travel discussion committee will talk about that a little bit further.
Yeah.
One other thing we thought we might do is if anybody's got any trips coming up that they just like to tell people, hey, I'm headed I'm headed to Australia, or I'm headed to France or something like that, and you might get some advice from people that have traveled there. I don't know whether I'll get anybody to share that, but anybody have any interesting trips you just want, since we've got a couple minutes left, anybody that we haven't heard from yet, that you have something going on sometime in the near future? Like I said, I wasn't sure I'd get anybody to necessarily do that, but I don't see anybody at the moment, but I thought that might be something I'll recommend to Joe for future meetings. Is if you have trips coming up, you don't have to do your whole plan on it. Just say, I'm headed to France, and if anybody's been there, I'd love to talk with them, or that type of thing. It would be a good way for you to get some advice, or maybe some special things that that you hadn't seen, or maybe even a recommendation for a restaurant or two. So maybe we might try to build that into future meetings. So anything else that anybody else wants to bring up?
Just one last comment, Al. So when we do when I'm planning our vacations, we stay off the interstates. You can't see anything from interstate except billboards and exit ramps. So it's always the 2-lane roads, which works really well on circle tours and a lot of other things here in the state. US 31, US 27, all of those routes. US 41 upstairs, US 41 up in the UP, M2 in the UP. Yeah, so we stay off the multi-lane highways everywhere we go.
I agree with that completely. If you need speed, you use the interstates, but otherwise getting off on those side roads is a lot more interesting. Susan or Pat again?
Yeah, Dave, I had a question about that, and you too, Al. So do you set your GPS settings to avoid interstates, or do you just rely on paper maps in order to avoid interstates?
Paper map.
Uh-huh.
And we've done both. Sometimes we set it that we don't want to go on our GPS, that we don't want to be on interstates, and that's a good way to do that. But I always feel like it's a good idea to have a paper map to back up your GPS. I have had the GPS direct me to the wrong places at times, and that can be frustrating. You have to have a sense, in my opinion, you have to have a sense of where you're going. The GPS, I don't know how we lived without that for so many years, because we rely on that extensively for everywhere we go. But I always like to have a paper map handy to say, wait a second, this is taking me the wrong direction, or I can see a faster way or a more interesting way to go. So
Right.
the
So
GPS is going to take you maybe the fastest route, but maybe you'd be missing some things along the way.
So that's the other thing that I do in all my planning. I've got a county road map for all 83 counties in the state of Michigan. And we use those. On those, there may be a lot of historic stuff and sites on those maps that you can pick out and add to your itinerary if you want as well.
You've got a pretty good store of maps. It looks like Pat.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of our first trip with our travel trailer, and we got off on a dirt road, wandering around, and we didn't know where we were. We weren't on a map that we could find, and Susan's idea was to go backwards, but we were going to have to go backwards about 3 miles, and we didn't know how to drive backwards. It was
Gosh.
It was like our 5th day with the travel trailer. And we ran across this woman who I think spoke English. It's not clear. And we basically finally understood that we just need to keep going forward and we get there. But
Yeah.
it was an exciting moment.
Yeah.
Just
I stop and pull in somewhere and ask directions. I'm not afraid to do any of that. That happens all the time.
Yeah, that's really a good thing to do also. Yes. So what we had one time where we were going to our niece who had moved to a new house and down by Marshall, and we just put the GPS in and it messed it up. It took us to the opposite side of the freeway. And it told us to stop the car. Literally, the GPS told us that. Stop your car, get out, and walk. It said that verbally. And so we had to call her and say, how do we get to your house? So you need both, I think. So all right, with that, maybe Dave does or Joe does such a good job of always making sure we wrap up by 5:30, and I can tell him that we're wrapping up by 5:25. He'll be happy to hear that and keep us on schedule. So I'm going to
get an assignment again then, Al.
Yeah. Oh no. Joe does such a good job on this. I really appreciate all the stuff that he does for this group. So thank you all for participating, and we'll hopefully see you on November 19th.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Dave.
Thanks so much, Dave.
You're welcome.